So welcome to Conversations with Melissa, presented by RenaFi. RenaFi provides practical, research-based advice courses and peer support, focusing on the underlying drivers of our ADHD behavior. We provide a holistic program that serves to help you thrive with ADHD, not in spite of it. Visit RenaFi, RENAF as in Frank, I.com to learn more about what we have to offer. And remember to check out our YouTube channel for ADHD resources and information. My guest is Cynthia Hammer, founder of the Inattentive ADHD Coalition. You have a lot of things we could be talking about.
Well, I want to find out how the combined type of woman differs from the inattentive type of woman, because often they talk about girls with ADHD as though they're one monolith too. And I wanted to find out if the women with the combined type differ very much from the women with the inattentive type. But what I'm finding out, which is surprising me, is that they didn't get diagnosed either. So the combined type, as long as you're a female, you usually have your hyperactivity is expressed through being very verbal and very talkative, but you're not physically active. And it seems maybe I'm going beyond where the knowledge is, but it seems that the ones that are getting diagnosed are ones who are physically hyperactive. You know, the ones that are getting up out of their seat in the classroom, and the others, if they don't show that symptom of physical hyperactivity, but they're showing it in how talkative they are and how many ideas they have, then they're still getting missed. So I'm just saying my concern started out being with inattentive, but now my concern is broadening to be all the children, no matter what type of ADHD they have, that are still being overlooked. And meanwhile, we've learned how important early diagnosis is. Oh, I don't even remember when the DSM-5 came out. It might have been even 8 years or more ago. But the definition and what a lot of prescribers, clinicians would go off of, and what the rating scales are based on, are the criteria in the DSM-5. And the DSM-5 breaks it into inattentive and then also separately hyperactive, impulsive. And I think there are about 8 symptoms for each type.
We've been talking about kids having trouble getting diagnosed. And I know when I talk with other women that either combined type or inattentive is more often what they'll identify with, and that we weren't diagnosed as children. We have difficulty getting diagnosed as adults. So I know you're going to talk about these criteria. We have some adults in the room. I'm sure there's parents who are interested in what are the symptoms in kids, but we need to be even-handed with that. Some things have to do with some people are in here listening for themselves as adults.
Okay. Right. But you made me want to finish my thought about why it's so important for children to get diagnosed early. We're finding out from Dr. Russell Barkley's research that people with unidentified, undiagnosed, untreated ADHD are dying on average 12 years earlier than the average population. And some of the explanations for those earlier deaths are accidents, car accidents, sometimes it's suicide, sometimes they develop health problems, which overeating or diabetes, there's a lot of health problems that they might develop. And even though they go to see the doctor, they aren't able to follow the doctor's regime. You know, because of their untreated ADHD, they're often unable to actually practice good health practices. So that early diagnosis is going to help your child grow up in a healthier way with a healthier self-esteem and self-confidence. We're interviewing adults with inattentive ADHD, and they're telling us how different their lives would have been if they were diagnosed as children. They wouldn't have developed anxiety. They wouldn't have developed depression or low self-esteem or self-confidence. they said that having ADHD is not the problem. Most of us eventually feel like can create good lives for ourselves, but not knowing we have ADHD is the problem, because we don't understand ourselves. We don't know what is going to make us function our best, and we're often in situations where we don't function our best, and that creates our low self-esteem and poor self-confidence.
You've said so many things, right? There's the delay in getting diagnosed affects mental health. It's not a secret, and it seems pretty obvious. If you're being criticized or shamed around not completing things,
Yeah.
and then even the things you say to yourself, oh, this time I'm gonna finish that or follow through, and still have difficulty, it obviously affects self-esteem, how you feel about yourself, how you know yourself. Let's go back to some of those symptoms.
Sure.
Yeah. What are the
Well,
things for yourself that that persist, that vex you?
the thing, well, avoidance of tasks that I don't want to do, tasks that are hard. And sometimes I've read this book about, eat the frog first. So some days I say I'm going to eat the frog today, because and often I have this strategy of checking my social media, checking Facebook, looking at my email. They're all my delaying tactics before I say it's time to eat the frog. And then I have to go do something, which is usually for me something technological that I have to read instructions for, and I don't have the patience to totally read the instructions so that I understand them, or there's words in there that I don't understand. And then, at least now, I've been learning to edit videos, and I write back and forth with Descript. They're very helpful, and they tell me how to do it. And when I finally do it, I say, "Oh, that was so easy," but I just couldn't understand the directions all on my own. And the other part, actually, I don't know if it's not really listed as having poor memory, but I've talked with other people with ADD, and they say their poor memory, especially short-term memory, is something that really plagues them. And for me, that shows up where if I read even a sentence on the computer screen that I want to know later, I have to write it down, or I have to copy and paste it. I just can't remember the smallest thing. Can't really assess if my memory's gotten worse. I think I've just always had a poor memory through my whole life.
The memory is such a tangible, right? It trips us up. Do we lose things? Do we forget where we put a thing?
Yes.
And
Yeah, it was in my hand a minute ago, and where did I even put it down? I can't remember that. And we're lucky that my husband has a cell phone, so he can call my phone, and I'm walking around the house trying to hear where the phone's ringing.
It- yeah.
And what I read was you make careless mistakes, because we often just get those details wrong. Somehow we're good big picture people, but forgetting those details, we get it wrong, and then we keep remembering it wrong.
The working memory thing that you talked about, I've worked with spreadsheets a lot, and some of the time I'll have to go back if there's digits many, many times to compare things, to see if they're they're a replication, right? If it's a duplicate, for example. So this idea of working memory, I do notice that it improves when I'm getting sufficient sleep, but it doesn't take it all the way out of the equation. I have a woman friend who, she's independent. She can support herself, and yet she literally loses her bank card or her Metro card once a week. And I thought, how can you survive where that's how you pay for things? I mean, that much hassle with this memory issues it's just so significant.
Well, when you bring up the credit cards, when I after learning about my ADHD and starting medicine, it was the first time that I said, I stopped and looked at my behavior and could say, this is a problem. Because before that, and I don't know if this is true of everyone that was ADD, but I was always just moving on, moving on, moving on, or assuming that that's the best I can do. But once I got started on medicine, I said, losing my credit card is a problem. And that was the first thing I focused on because, we didn't know if it was in my coat pocket, if it was at home, if it was at the last store where I shopped. I just didn't know where the credit card was. So that was my first skill that I built, was always returning my credit card to the same place in my wallet. And that's what I advise people, is just to find the simplest thing you can change that will make the biggest difference. And only focus on that until you're successful. And that feeling of success is what's going to build you self-confidence. One thing after another, you're just going to slowly improve because you've learned something and you're able to do it in a better way.
I have to say, I had a similar strategy that, anytime I make a purchase, I keep the wallet open until when it's just so similar that we all have to do these building blocks. And then something might throw you off, right? There's some weird thing with the person bagging a thing, and then, oh my gosh, we're right back. We can just get right into that I still haven't got it
Ah,
mentality.
yeah. Well, the thing to realize is that when you start these things, you're really a beginner, and you shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people who have been doing these things. I don't know, intuitively, they just figured out how to do things in efficient ways, but we're struggling to learn new behaviors. And it can, I don't know, I can't remember now because it's been 30 years since I've been diagnosed. And I think along with that, learning your new behaviors, you slowly accept yourself the way you are. This was what surprised me so far in interviewing these women with the combined type, is I was asking them ahead of time to check off which of the 18 symptoms, because they have both inattentive and the hyperactive impulsive, which of the 18 symptoms they related to. And they would check off a certain number. Some of them checked off all 18. And then I said, after your diagnosis, which of the 18 do you still have? And they had a few, maybe, that they said were less often, but the biggest thing that changed was their self-talk. How they viewed themselves and how they forgave themselves for some of their issues is what enabled them to grow their self-esteem.